All right, you guys. We have Laura King with us today. Thank you so much, Laura, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we were talking before we hit record. We had Ted on, Laura's husband. You guys are a power couple. We had Ted on way back in 2022, and I think Amanda said it was episode 39. So if you guys want to, it's probably his old outdated nutrition plan, 2022. I don't know if he's evolved, but if you guys want to listen to that, we'll link in the show notes. And today we're going to dive into all things Laura's nutrition and hydration. But before we do that, we're going to do your two truths and a lie. So I'll let you break those down for us.
Okay, number one, I'm one of seven children. Number two, before sport, I pursued music and wanted to be a professional flautist. And number three, I dabble in interior design.
Okay. Well, I mean, if you guys are watching the Zoom, her background is beautiful. It's not a man-made image, or it's not like a generated AI image. So I feel like the interior design, I feel like that's definitely true. Um, Flautist, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder, I feel like sometimes those instruments can help with your was it like your aerobic capacity, your breathing or something too, right? Because you have to like have I knew a kid, he was like, did didgeridoo growing up. You have to like really be able to like have like consistent, powerful breath hold and out. Um,
Well,
yeah.
I can imagine. I mean, just thinking about my husband had a bad bike crash and
Oh
punctured
yeah.
his lung. And part of the therapy was this like breathing device that you have to
Yes.
basically
Yeah.
rehab your lungs with. So
Yeah.
I could
Yeah.
see playing the
Yeah.
flute could be the same.
Yes. Is that where you initially got your strong lungs from, maybe? I'm gonna say you're not one of seven children. What do you think, Amanda? I feel like it's like one of five or something like that.
I think I'm going to agree. I feel like there can be overlap between athletes and musicians because it's like there's like a focus
Yeah.
thing. There's like a part of your brain that
Yeah.
works differently. So I could go either way, but I'm going to agree with you, Kyla. I'm going to go the lie is one of seven
Okay.
kids.
I feel like design is like up your alley for sure. Okay. So we will reveal the answer for our listeners at the end of the episode. So stay tuned. And first, why don't you, Laura, give us and our listeners a little bit of background without maybe revealing some of your truths or lies. But what got you initially into endurance sports? Where did that all begin?
Yeah, I would say it really began in entering high school, which is kind of late for, and at least I went to a private school growing up and had the opportunity to transition to public school. And I was going through eighth grade. I was at this little tiny school with no sports opportunities. And so
Mm.
it was like this big wide world opened up when I went to ninth grade and had the opportunity to look at all the sports opportunities in front of me. I had always been extremely athletic. I just hadn't had the actual like opportunity to be on an official team or really pursue something. And it's, like with a club or a coach or a team. And
Mhm.
so I started swimming in on the swim team in ninth grade and progressed really quickly. I already had swam my whole life and knew I had an aptitude for it. But immediately upon joining, kind of the coach told my parents, "Hey, we think she has talent. You're not going to see the full kind of extent of what your abilities are by just staying on a high school team. We really encourage her to join a club team." So
Oh.
I had the opportunity to swim club, which just means you swim all year round a whole lot, and double practices morning and night. And that was just, I fell in love with it right away. And I, by no means, I don't think I think I had a decent amount of talent, but I was swimming with Olympic trials level swimmers, senior
Wow.
national level swimmers. So definitely, especially kind of joining that late. I was a little bit late to the game, and I loved the process of it. I loved being around these high achieving athletes, and also just like having kind of the opportunity to see some really quick progression by putting in the hours and hours staring at the black line. So that was my progression. I ended up planning to swim in college,
Mm.
and really wasn't on like the radar of Division I teams because I had such little experience and not a huge record of times,
Mm.
but decided I was going to be attending. I wanted to attend the University of Washington, which had a Division I team, and kind of had a verbal agreement that I was going to be a walk-on.
Mm.
Long story short, they kind of over recruited, ended up cutting folks that they had given promised scholarships to. So I was definitely
Oh,
on the
wow.
end of not being able to swim. And I found myself at that point entering college thinking this is something that I thought I was, and I thought I was entering college with an identity of like, I'm an athlete. And
Mhm.
it definitely was a moment where I thought, well, without swimming and something that I pursued so vigorously for so long, who am I and
Mm.
what am I going to do and who am I here at school? So that was a little bit of a pivotal point for me. I ended up joining the master's swim team just to keep my love of endurance sport going, and that led eventually to becoming involved in triathlon in
Mm.
college. In the triathlon, we had a club team. Very fast forward, pursued triathlon for 12 years, for every distance from sprint distance to Ironman. Went to the
Wow.
Ironman World Championships in Hawaii, qualified for my pro card at Escape from Alcatraz, which is one of my favorite races.
Oh, yeah.
And at that point, I I wasn't certain that pursuing triathlon at a professional level was the next step for me. And
Mhm.
um, at kind of around the same time, moved to Northern California, had the opportunity to move from Seattle to Northern California. This is graduated college now. I've entered the work world and had just landed a job at Power Bar,
Oh, wow.
that I was very excited to be able to kind of meld my like endurance sport pursuits with my professional life.
Mhm.
And the Northern California territory for my work was open. And I randomly just asked my boss one day, they were hiring for it. And I was like, would you ever consider letting me just transfer
Mm.
territories?
Mhm.
Um, and to my surprise, he said, go down there for a weekend, make sure. I'd never been to the San Francisco Bay Area. He said, make sure that's what you actually want to do. And I took my bike and discovered Marin County was like a heaven on earth and quickly made the decision. So back to my like endurance sport trajectory, alongside all of that happening, I was kind of becoming a little bit more involved in just cycling. I moved to Marin County and mostly my community became a lot of cyclists.
Mm.
And I had an invite to um, the Olympic Training Center for USA Cycling that they were putting on what's called the Talent ID Camp, which is just kind of trying to identify talent.
Yeah.
And that was another really pivotal kind of moment in my journey because I was kind of considering what it might look like to pursue cycling professionally. And also, we had a panel of kind of pros that sat us down and really kind of gave it to us, like no sugarcoating what the journey is like,
Mhm.
and really kind of just emphasized how much you need to really want it despite all the kind of the hardships that you're going to face and
Yeah.
the very low amount of money that you'll make. And that timing was coincided with an amazing opportunity for a new job move for me, getting a job as a national sales manager at Goo Energy Lab. So
Oh, wow.
nutrition has actually been a big part of my work career path.
That's awesome.
And I was, again, I kind of made the decision to prioritize career at that point because I loved the idea that I could pursue sport alongside of it and not, I don't think that like having the pressure to perform was something that I was going to help me be my best. It was actually
Mhm.
more of a detriment to me and my personality.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of like a couple situations of just like that kind of made a huge impact on my journey. And
Mhm.
I was lucky to worked for GU for 4 years. They're an amazing company that also really supported all of their employees in their athletic pursuits. And so
That's
had a lot of cool kind of opportunities to do things like race Leadville and just dabble in more endurance mountain bike races and cycling specific. And it was kind of alongside all of that that I eventually met my husband and really kind of dove deep into cycling world in a different way. And yeah, I think that's like kind of the, sorry, I hope that wasn't too long-winded, but it's the
No,
short version.
that's great. That's great. So we have quite a bit of swimming under your belt, and then we start getting on the bike and doing, and it sounds like road and mountain you were doing race wise.
Yeah, I dabbled in a little bit of road. I definitely was always, I had also tried some Xterra racing and did the World
Mm-hmm.
Championships in Maui there. And I have an aptitude for like the technical aspects of cycling. And so I really liked when I could compete on the dirt, because I felt like there's this added element of, even if you aren't by just your own athletic or your aerobic capacity, if you there's that, but that element, but then if you
Mm-hmm.
can add in kind of another element like the technical skills, I felt like
Mm-hmm.
I could perform better, because that was something that I guess I could compensate for where I maybe my aerobic engine wasn't as big as someone else's. So yeah, and still to this day, that's how I feel like I enjoy adding in the added a little bit of adventure within
Mm-hmm.
bike racing, and that's usually found on the dirt side of things for
Yes.
me.
Yeah. Amazing. And so for our listeners, what's kind of on the radar for you this year race wise?
Yeah, I mean, I might take a step back and just explain that upon meeting my husband, who had an extensive career in bike racing in Europe, Tour de France, I met Ted before the birth of this new category of cycling called gravel cycling. And he was pretty pivotal in kind of actually growing this category of cycling to where it is today. He's one of the first world tour pros to come to gravel. And that actually brought a lot of momentum and like visibility to this burgeoning new category. And I was a little bit in the beginning when he took on some of these, what was Dirty Kansas, this 200-mile gravel race in Kansas. I was a little bit like, gravel, I don't get it. Why, if you're gonna be on dirt, why not be on a mountain bike? But slowly but surely entered a few of these events and started to see what was unique and special about gravel. And together this became something that we could compete and take part in together as ambassadors, as bike racers, just as people that love to be in community with others. And this gravel had this, unique aspect about it that really kind of was like a come one, come all type
Mm-hmm.
vibe.
Mm-hmm.
And just sort of, yeah, I think like there were a lot of things that attracted us to gravel. So we had together some opportunities to kind of, to be ambassadors in the sport for brands and to kind of integrate this into our work life. And so we've done that for the past 9 years now, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Wow.
And now I forget where I was even going with this.
I'm
Oh, but
racing
what
this
I'm
year. Yeah.
looking forward to, and or how I'm kind of thinking about this year. And so I say all that to say, we are 42 years old now and have been, endurance sports has been a big part of our life for so long. And we are still really motivated to get the best out of ourselves and race. But life has also evolved and changed. We've had 2 children. We have a lot of plates in the air with just projects and all kinds of things that we're involved in. So I say that because racing is important, but it's not the end all be all. And when we're out there, we're getting after it as best we can, and we want to give it our all. But we also recognize like that's gonna at our age, it's probably going to continue to evolve and look different each year.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that really surprised me last year was I'm last year, just being, I have a 2.5-year-old, so being 2 years postpartum, I definitely I thought I felt good 1 year postpartum, but I realized 2 years postpartum, oh wow, now I really feel good, like just energy
Yeah.
wise. And so I ended up having a year of racing that wasn't, the whole year wasn't like some standout year, but I had some good results and I most importantly just felt like I was myself,
Mm,
and ended up being able to attend the world championships for the elite field in gravel racing, which is now a thing,
yeah.
and took place in Belgium. So uh, last year was a year of kind of just being an eye-opening year of like, um, maybe I still have, some competitive years in me, and I still have more kind of to gain and to give to sport. So with that in mind, that's kind of a fun way to begin 2025. Um, a lot of how we put together our schedules is a joint effort, because we love when we can. One reason I didn't pursue road cycling, and one reason I was turned off by it, was there's a lot of lonely
Mm,
travels, and like being away from family and missing out on a lot of just personal, life things. And that was one hard part for Ted too. And so the more that we can integrate our family into this and travel together, and yeah, make it a family affair, is definitely something that we feel like we're privileged and privileged to do and excited about. So a lot of the races, Ted and I actually have different strengths, but
mm,
but so sometimes I end up attending a race that may not be something that I'm like, this is right up my alley. But that's good. It's actually made me a better cyclist.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean, some of the races that I am or one race in particular that I'm looking forward to, is we're going to go to it's a UCI gravel race, which
Mm,
means UCI is like the governing body for international cycling. And so that means it's a qualifier for the World Championships. And
mm,
there are only two in the US this year, and one of
mm.
them is in Fayetteville, Arkansas. So
Oh, yeah.
it's funny that in gravel cycling, there are so many almost different like nuances of different types of racing within gravel. So UCI tend to be a little bit shorter, and they tend to be a little bit more dynamic. And um, I just having experienced a little bit of that last year, I've really enjoyed that style. Like it's
Awesome.
more around the 4 to 5 hour mark, which I feel
Mhm.
like is a real sweet spot for
Mm,
just my current balance in life. Like,
yeah.
you get into the 8 and 9 and 10 hour racing, and it's you only have so many of those in you a year. At least I only have so many of those in me a year at
Yeah.
this point in my life.
Yeah.
So I appreciate trying to sprinkle in the races that are a little bit more just manageable for
Yeah.
our family.
Yeah, definitely. That is a great point. Being able to travel together and be with your family. And I'm sure your kids are getting really cool exposure as well. Like, goodness, how lucky. Like, that's amazing.
Well, it's been special. We, around the pandemic, purchased a Sprinter van, and that was when my daughter was born. And we actually purchased the Sprinter van primarily because my family's in Seattle. We wanted to drive across the country and
Mm,
introduce her to my family.
mm,
Um, but here we are 5 years later, and we have upgraded to a new Sprinter van. We've taken, I think, 5 cross-country trips with our
wow.
both kids. And it's been an amazing, I think, education for the kids. They understand geography really well. They understand the states they've been to. I think one confusing thing is that the gravel circuit is a little bit of a traveling circus. So they're sometimes confused, or they're seeing the same people
Yeah.
in different places all around the
Yeah.
country. But that's also really fun to have
Yeah.
that kind of network and community. So it's been a total adventure, and something that we're like, hey, we're just going to embrace this season. We don't know how long it will last, but it's
Yeah.
been really cool to have the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, that is amazing. So with kind of putting together the pieces of like way back when we were doing try and in that world, and then now to the 4 to 5 hour gravel racing situation, how has your nutrition during racing and even hydration maybe, how has that evolved from the triathlon days to now?
Oh, it's evolved in a lot of ways. The first thing that comes to mind is I've had an incredible struggle in probably I'd say 7+ hour races of just getting um, really, really, really sick after racing.
Mm. Hmm.
And it generally doesn't happen in the race. It sometimes does, but heat and humidity are major factors
Yeah.
towards kind of inducing that. And I mean, just as examples, I don't know that I finished an Ironman without being in the med tent and receiving
Wow.
anti-nausea medicine and IVs and still continuing to throw up. Um,
Gosh.
so that has been pretty challenging because it just takes such a toll on your body, and it's
Mm.
frustrating to finish a race that way. And
Yeah.
it's um, pretty awful to endure. And then now that I have a family, it's the last thing. I mean, that to have one parent kind of also needing to be taken care of is not
Hmm.
very helpful when the other parent has also probably been racing. So
Yeah.
I bring that all up because I during those years, I'd say 10 years ago, I talked to as many resources as I could, trying to get to the bottom of what was going on.
Mm.
And I can't say that I 100% have nailed it down, but I have not experienced that kind of sickness in a long time now, maybe like 6 or 7 years.
Nice.
And I don't know 100% what the factor is that has changed, but I have a couple of suspicions, and those
Mm.
are someone once told me that they wondered if I was having a really sudden drop in blood pressure upon finishing.
Mm.
And that was like, because a lot of times I would finish a race and I'd be fine for a half hour and then the vomiting would start.
Oh, interesting.
So the last time I finished Leadville, I had a kind of a tactic in that I finished and I immediately started to feel like major waves of nausea and just thought, oh, it's going to happen again.
Hmm.
And somebody had encouraged me to try to get back on my bike and actually just like really cool down slowly. And
Hmm.
I did that. And at the same time, I just forced myself. I rode around the streets of Leadville and just forced a sandwich down because I really do believe I'm also really depleted.
Hmm.
And the nausea subsided, went away, and I never ended up throwing up. And I just thought, okay, I don't know if that was which was helpful. They were probably both helpful.
Mm.
But I'll take it. And
Yeah.
that's kind of been that seems to have helped me in a bunch of races recently.
Wow.
The other thing that I think has also contributed in change is like, it's so funny to think I have been someone who has taught sports nutrition clinics. I have been somebody I worked for sports nutrition companies. That is what I did, was to inform athletes on how they can fuel their bodies correctly. And yet you can tell someone all day long and still make so many mistakes yourself. I definitely prioritize practicing my nutrition in my regular workouts more than I ever have, or more
Mm.
than I ever used to, because I was,
Hmm.
to be honest, it was like I've just viewed it as like calories I don't want to take in unless I have to. And
Hmm.
I don't view my nutrition that way anymore. I view it as um, having my glycogen stores topped off so that I can better execute my workout. I view it as finishing my workout with and replenishing my glycogen stores so that I'm not depleted when I start my next workout the following day.
Right.
And I actually knew those things, but knowing them and then actually really believing them and putting them into practice it's funny how that's taken me so long. And
Yeah.
so I do think a bit of my kind of sickness post race is maybe just due to some severe depletion. And
Mm.
I think in working on getting in more calories and getting in, I feel like I'm somebody that's a really heavy sweater, or I lose a lot of salt in my sweat.
Mhm.
Really working on electrolyte consumption during a race.
Yeah.
And then also I think one thing that I've probably also taken away is just I struggle in heat and humidity, and I sometimes just have to temper my effort
Mm.
a little bit more, especially in the beginning in those types of conditions.
Mhm.
And those are kind of the three things I'd say that have helped me through the years.
Yeah, those are all, I mean, those are all great too, because I mean, if you think about it, you're with the cool down and getting food in, you're letting you're letting your core temperature come down more slowly, but then you're also trying to get blood flow to still go to the gut to help move things along instead of go away from the gut. Yeah, that I love all of that. Do you talking about the heat management piece? Do you do any like heat protocols or training or sauna or anything like that in prep for those warmer races, or you just go for it?
Um, I would love to say yes, because I actually have ambitions to do that.
Hmm.
Um, but I haven't been good at it in the past. And I think also the benefits of heat protocol and heat training are really just becoming um, more widely like known and accepted. I mean, even to the point where they're saying heat training can be like poor man's altitude training, right? Like
Hmm.
you can mimic the same kind of benefits from it. And
Hmm.
I fully believe that, because I think training in heat and humidity is harder than altitude, and for
Hmm.
me personally.
Hmm.
Um, so all that said, I haven't done a good job of it, but we are signed up for Unbound this year,
Mm.
and that has been, let's see, I've raced the 100 twice. I have DNF'd the 200,
Oh.
and I've pretty much been perpetually afraid to tackle the 200 again because of my propensity to
Mhm.
struggles in those conditions, um and my sickness,
Mm.
my propensity to post race sickness like that.
Yeah.
I know that race is going to be a real challenge for me, um, with both the conditions and kind of just like the post race
Yeah.
keeping everything down. So this year, one kind of breakthrough last year, we went to um, Gravel Locos, which is one of our favorite races in Texas, and it was extraordinarily hot,
Mm.
and it was 150 miles, and I I made it through in a way that I didn't completely fall apart, and I was able to manage the heat. And I really don't know why.
Mm.
And maybe a bit of it was just starting off the day really trying to avoid some of those high intense high intensity like spikes in effort,
Mhm.
knowing already like this is a race where I know what I'm up against, and I need to kind of really be smart. And another thing that I think made a huge difference is taking care of myself in the aid stations,
Mm.
to the point where I was even letting my competition right away in order to take care of myself.
Mhm.
And that's one of the first times I've done that. And
Mm.
I guess my eyes were open to what a difference it makes to get ice down your jersey, to really kind of bring your core temperature down, even just to take that 1 to 2 minutes, even if you're losing it,
Yeah.
and to see how you can still come back from that. So it's amazing to me that it's taken me, I mean, this is like going on 20 years of endurance sports to get to this point. So all that to say, I'm still open-minded I haven't decided what distance I'm doing at Unbound, but
Mm.
we are returning back to Texas, which is a week before Unbound. And I talked to my husband about, hey, if I am going to take on the 200, feel like I have unfinished business. I would like to check that box.
Yeah.
And if we're going to do it, I really need, maybe we can go early to Texas and try to spend a good, like basically 2 weeks of getting some heat training in. So to the extent that we're actually able to make that work for our schedule, then I'm thinking about doing it.
Yeah.
I'm always still so intimidated by those
Yeah.
conditions.
Yeah, it is wild. I was actually, funny enough, just on a webinar this morning, and it was all about altitude training, but they covered the heat training piece, and they were basically saying like you're saying, this information is becoming more and more widely available to the point that everybody's doing it, and the benefit that you get from it is so profound that if you're not doing it, you're already like, I think they were saying like up to 10% improvements in performance. So that's significant. That's really
It's
significant.
significant. Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I
So
mean, my
it,
husband, I just watched my husband, this, we're having one of the most epic winters in Vermont, and this is the longest I've ever gone without being able to ride outside. We
oh
typically ride
wow.
through the winter,
Yeah.
but we just had snowstorm after snowstorm, and he was preparing for a race, 1,000-kilometer race in Rwanda, of all places, which is hot and humid.
Yeah.
And he's down in the basement with his heat training protocol from his coach, which is, kind of doing a block of training, let's call it 2-hour ride. And then the last 45 minutes, he's putting on this painter suit
Yes.
and taking his effort down a notch. But he performed really well in the heat and humid conditions. And he really is a big believer that paint suit,
Yep.
sweating
Yep.
in the basement, just 45 minutes, and
Yeah.
feeling his heart rate come up and feeling the adaptations, that it really made a difference. So I'm intrigued by that. I'm taking notes, but I have
Yeah.
not invested in the painter suit yet.
Yeah, yeah. They talked about that in my seminar this morning. They called it a core suit. I think that I mean, a painter suit's just fine. I think maybe they're trying to trademark a heat suit or something. But yeah, same idea. So
Yeah.
yeah. Have you done, out of curiosity, like sweat testing too, before and after like a training event or a race?
Uh, it's so funny because I used to also give nutrition talks on how you should do this. But I think it's probably been like 15 years since I've done that. So I no, not
Yeah.
really.
Okay. Yeah, it would be, I mean, I'd be curious talking about the times you get really sick versus not, the percent dehydration, right? And the blood volume piece that you're talking about. But yeah, that would be interesting. And then no sweat sodium testing, it sounds like, either, maybe?
No,
No. Okay. You just go for it. Just ballpark it. So let's talk a little bit about
I
what
would
is,
love to.
yeah. Um,
It's also just like life is such
yeah.
a hustle and a juggle these days that
Yeah.
sometimes the first thing that you sacrifice, or that I tend to sacrifice, is like those little details. And not because I want to, but just because there's a lot of competing priorities.
Yeah, yeah, totally. I think though there's something to be said, and I think I remember this when we had Ted on here, is that like you said, you've been doing this for a really long time and you know how to listen to your body really well. And you have had like you have those opportunities to finesse and fine tune things, and you have a good idea of what's working and obviously what's not working without having to do these additional testing things, right? So,
Uh,
yeah, I think there's something to be said for that. Like you have a good idea. So, with that being said, what are you using from a nutrition and hydration lens during a race, and how often are you trying to get that in your body?
you mean like product wise, or just kind of?
Yeah, product wise, like do you shoot for, a lot of people talk about carbs per hour targets, or do you go for that? Or are you just trying to eat as much as you can when you can, or what's your approach?
Um, yeah, I would say a lot of it is very intuitive at this
Hmm.
point. Yes, I'm trying to absorb as many carbs per hour as I can, but there are circumstances where your absorption is limited. Like in those, I do have a really hard time with the amount I can absorb when the conditions are, when the blood is being shunted from your gut and
Right.
it's hot and humid and it's trying to cool your body. So I do feel like I have a good sense of when those conditions are presenting more challenges towards how much I can get in. And just like almost knowing what that feels like, as your
Hmm.
gut is like, you need to just take a pause and not put any more nutrition in, because there's a fine line. And I've
Yeah.
been on both sides. I've probably been on, um, I'm just thinking about like Ironman Hawaii. Like I had a pretty disastrous Ironman Hawaii, and these
Mm,
conditions are not,
yeah.
again, we're like the thorn in my side. But I think a lot of where I went wrong there was trying to take in too much on the bike and just like
Mm-hmm.
totally overwhelming my gut. And then I spent the entire marathon throwing up.
Oh.
So, um, I, so it's funny to have, I worked for Power Bar, I worked for Goo. I met Ted when I was still working for Goo, and we had about a year of overlap where he's promoting Untapped
Mm.
and I'm working for Goo and thinking like, can we just try to not talk about our sports nutrition because, you know, I have this employer and you're trying to promote maple syrup. So eventually we decided we do well being on the same team. And I started using Untapped products when I no longer was working for Goo. And I I will say I mean I was just sort of skeptical because I had been informed by, you know, the scientists at Power Bar and Goo, and
Mm-hmm.
all wonderful people with actually I took away so much great science from working with them and learning from them. But there is something also to be said about like the palatability of what you're taking in and enjoying what you're taking in. And you know, I found the viscosity of maple syrup to be a lot easier for me to get down.
Yeah.
And I felt like it settled really well in my stomach. Um, so and it's been fun to now live in Vermont and be a state where people know maple syrup is made and to see the actual process happening, and then to be able to be a part of this company that is full of like an awesome athletes, people who really care about making great products, but also people who care about those where their food comes from, where the
Yeah.
ingredients come from, and that they're clean and you know, like that they're benefiting the athlete. So yeah, I've been a big proponent of them. There are times where, you know, there is such thing as flavor fatigue and like fatigue of
Mm-hmm.
just eating the same thing. So you have to, I'm not going to sit here and say all I eat is Untapped all the time because we all need to switch it up and
Yeah.
eat different things. And I mean, I don't drink soda, but there's nothing that tastes better to me in the middle of a long ride or a race than like downing a cold Coke.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it is like, what is your palate craving in the conditions in which that you're faced with? And what is your stomach going to kind of like accept at that time? And that changes. And, you know, that's why it's nice when you have an aid station with all these options, because it's just like,
Yeah.
you just need to figure out what you can get down and what you know is going to maybe sit well. And so in that sense, I think we're flexible with like um, what is going to allow me to stay on top of my carb intake at the moment, and
Mm-hmm.
what might get me some extra electrolytes and salt, and yeah, what's just going to absorb
Yeah.
easily, and to be adaptable too, because you're not always out there with whatever, you know, in a race situation, especially like I'm not always just bringing my own nutrition. And so kind of having a good gauge and sense of um, where you get, like what kind of food has what kind of carbs. So what is going to be easy to digest, what isn't going to be like full of a ton of fiber, or something that you don't, is going to maybe be detrimental during a race or not sit
Mm-hmm.
well in your gut. And so I think over the years I have a good intuitive sense of those things. So I'm not like a strict, this is
Mm-hmm.
exactly how I have to have my nutrition. I can be pretty flexible and
Yeah.
make it work
Awesome.
without a ton of forethought.
Yeah. Yeah. With the Untapped line, I know you mentioned obviously the gels, and then do you guys have a drink mix too, and then you have electrolytes as well, right?
Yep, they make maple aid, and there's a grape maple aid. I love
Mm.
it because
Mm.
this is not like your synthetic grape. It's made
Mm.
of real grapes, and
Nice.
it tastes like grape juice to me. It's so
Yeah.
delicious. I found it really easy to get down. And then they make
Hmm.
a ginger Maple-Aid, and they
Mhm.
have a lemon tea
Mm,
Maple-Aid. So yeah, there are a few, they have a new lime Maple-Aid. So there are
cool.
a bunch of different options.
Yeah, the ginger one sounds interesting. I wonder if that would like help settle some people's stomachs too.
Yes, I mean it's real ginger. So
Yeah.
if you like, I love the bite and the taste
Hmm.
of ginger, and if you like that, I think it kind of cuts the sweetness of a lot of the things that you're
Hmm.
consuming, and I think that's the struggle sometimes. You're just taking in so much sugar, and it just
Yeah.
nothing start it all starts to not taste good or to be
Yeah.
hard to take in. So I
Right.
like things that have like a little bit of a sometimes it's an herbal taste, or
Hmm.
sometimes it's like the spice of ginger, but just something that kind of is helping cut the sweetness, and I find that to help me.
Yeah, that's great. So intuitive with fueling and then sounds like hydration as well as you're going through the race. I mean, talking about these hot races, are you trying to opt for like the larger bottles and like a pack or versus like a cooler race or how do you approach that?
Yeah, that's all within the last couple of years. I think it has been neat to see this movement in nutrition towards more calories and better, just all around better nutrition. So with that has come these like giant bottles now that you can fit into your bottle cages, which I've utilized. And yeah, we use packs
Hmm.
often. I will say I wish there are different solutions, and I've been intrigued by trying maybe a pack on my bike rather than on my back, because I don't
Mm.
love the weight on my shoulders.
Yeah.
But we're mostly all out using them.
Hmm.
It's like pretty prevalent that in a race like that, where there are like pretty a
Yeah.
long way to go without a lot of aid stations, that's sort of, and
Hmm.
also just kind of the increased competitive nature of these races now. It's like you kind of got to carry everything, and the stops are really minimal,
Yeah.
or you're missing out on the train.
Right. Yeah. 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 If our listeners haven't watched some of like the transitions for some of these races, it's like seconds. Like it is in and out, whipping the pack off, someone's putting a pack on, refilling. Like it is like it's like a pit stop in NASCAR or something. It's wild. It's
Yeah,
really wild.
yeah, it's interesting because there it differs at races whether it is totally self-supported or whether
Mm,
you can have bottle hand ups.
right.
But this past year we raced in Sweden. We did these UCI style races. You can have um, support anywhere on the course, and then it becomes kind of a game of like how good of a team you have to even give you that support. It's definitely an advantage because riders can start with just one bottle and have multiple team members along the course handing them. And if you don't have as much support, then you're kind of weighed down
Right.
with all your nutrition. So
Yeah.
I do, I do appreciate when it is sort of when the rules bend towards kind of a level playing field, so that
Mm,
you aren't necessarily at an advantage just
hmm.
having like five extra team members, because
Right.
that's really hard to do for
Yeah.
your average person
Totally.
unless you are on a professional team with a lot of support.
That's true. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, I know we're getting close on time here, so I'll just do a couple more questions. Are there any specific supplements or micronutrients you prioritize to support your recovery or performance, energy levels, anything like that?
You know, I don't currently consume any supplements.
Mm.
I'm always supplement curious. You've had my friend Jess Sarah here on the
Yeah.
podcast, I think,
Hmm.
and she's recently talking to me about creatine and
Uh,
using creatine and the benefits that she's seen from it.
yeah.
So I have some in my cupboard, and I haven't been very good at actually implementing it, but
Yeah.
I'm intrigued. I would say we were sponsored by Inside Tracker for a few
Mm.
years, and that was a cool opportunity just to learn more about or first and foremost, just like it's full body full blood panel testing. I don't even know how
Mhm.
you full panel blood testing. Just getting a sense of all your biomarkers and where you are, and um And what it was really helpful for is just, I talked to a registered dietitian, or I think that it was a registered dietitian who talked to me about my results and just like ways to optimize some of my biomarkers with food. And specifically, like my ferritin has hovered pretty low, although the rest of my iron markers have remained pretty good. And so I have a little bit of I have an autoimmune gut issue in which my GI doctor doesn't want me to take iron. And so I look for ways to optimize my iron through food, which is like, I eat a lot of beans now, which I never would have thought would be beneficial, or really kind of, I really didn't know that how nutritious and helpful beans can be. And just other, just like being more attuned to ways in which I can get iron rich foods through my diet. And it's helped a ton. Actually, I don't work with Inside Tracker anymore, but I'm still kind of tracking all these same biomarkers. And I have an awesome PCP who is an athlete and is excited to talk to me about these types of things and discuss them and learn and talk through how to optimize them. And
Awesome.
my ferritin, it was like 15 before, and most recently it was like got up to 40, which is a really big deal for me.
Yes. Yeah.
So I don't know if that also has had an impact in just, I was telling you about how like I've just felt so much better energy wise in the last year, but I would like to think that it's a component. So
yeah, definitely. Did you did you get anemia or anything during either of your pregnancies? Oh, that's good.
No. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, the ferritin thing is a big a big player. And did you notice any issues like now going to altitude versus when you were at 15?
Oh, that's a good question, because I don't think that I haven't raced at altitude in a while.
Okay.
So TBD. I have never, but like I said, altitude, I've never thought like I feel terrible at altitude.
That's good.
I've never thought, of course, we all feel like hindered by it in some way, shape, or form. But like I said, I struggle so much more in the humidity, where I truly feel like I can't breathe compared to altitude.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know if that's just like in my head, or if it's something that just my body actually is handling it better. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Wow.
But
Okay. Well, I'll circle back to your two truths and a lie, and then we will find out where people can find you and follow you, so we can get you on your way today. So you said you're one of 7 children. Before sport, you were a flautist or wanted to be a flautist. I hope I'm saying that right. And that you dabble in interior design. And Amanda and I were thinking not one of 7 children was the lie. Is that correct?
you're correct.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
All right.
I'm one of 4. I'm the oldest of 4 girls.
Oh my gosh. Wow. 4.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's a lot of siblings to have. How was that growing up? I mean, I guess you don't know anything wiser, but you're the oldest.
No, it was a little chaotic.
Yeah.
I won't lie. I went to college and I just thought like, oh, it's so peaceful. I have my own space and it's quiet and I can concentrate. But it was also so much fun. And I actually just got back from a very special trip to Hawaii where my mom had celebrated her 70th birthday, and my 3 sisters and I surprised her with a trip to Hawaii. And so the 5 of us all got to go together and we had so much fun. And
that's great.
It's fun to have 3 sisters who we're all just, we share a lot in common.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And then tell us about the flautist stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I guess this probably just points to maybe my personality and the way that I pursue things. I tend to dive in pretty deep with whatever I am like interested in. And I started playing the flute when I was in 5th grade, and just it progressed from having private lessons to joining youth symphonies and competing kind of, and like trying out for, more and more elite like chamber symphonies. And it was a little bit of a challenge because I started swimming. I found swimming kind of as I was pursuing flute pretty
Wow.
seriously. And when I joined, I loved music, but I never felt like, it was like, I guess a better way to describe it is I found my people when I
Mhm.
found sport.
Yeah.
And I felt like even though I loved music, I hadn't found my people, and sport, there was some component of it that it's like that was really where my true passion was. And
Yeah.
so I did just pull my flute out the other day and
Oh, cool.
surprised my husband a little because I don't play for him very often. He was just like, and I feel like you know, you put like over 10,000 hours into something, you don't forget it. So I can pick it
Yeah.
up and just play.
That's great.
And I would like to still weave it into my life at some point.
Yeah.
Maybe when our season of life slows down a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so great. I mean, don't they say too, like, I mean, well, learning an instrument in and of itself is like so good for your brain, I think, like too.
Yeah,
So
it's basically like learning another language.
yeah, that's great. That's a good skill.
Yeah.
And then interior design, I mean, obviously we can see your space is beautiful. Do you help friends and family with their design plans? Like, tell us about that.
Well, yeah, I would say this really only became apparent to me in the last few years. We bought a house in Vermont and have just kind of, you know, through the years gone through some renovations. The room I'm sitting in is we just most recently finished this past spring, which is at like
Nice.
an apartment above our garage.
Awesome.
And it was the first time I've had a chance to like, my husband's awesome and he doesn't really care about how we design anything and just defers to me. So it's been really fun to just like, he's like, whatever you want, honey.
Yeah.
Um, to get to, yeah, do the whole like from start to finish, ideate the whole concept and I found a layout from an architect in New Zealand that was very similar to the
Cool.
layout we have. And just like every decision along the way, I just found this like, it's like this new outlet that I didn't know I would love so much. And yeah, if I was ever like looking for a new avenue of career in life, I'm like, I would love to do more of this. And I do have
Yeah.
like friends and family that ask my opinions or want me to help and be involved. And I by no means think I'm like that talented at it or anything. I just think it's really fun and
Yeah.
gratifying. And each project, it's like addicting. And we are
Yeah.
starting another project in a couple of months. And
Awesome.
it's like, oh, I get giddy because it's like getting
Yeah.
to start this whole fun new
Yeah.
process all over again. So yeah, just a fun like side hobby.
Yeah. It's a good like yeah, change for your brain too. You get to go be like use the creative side of your brain. I feel like when you do stuff like
Exactly.
that. So yeah, and you get
Yeah.
to see something completely change in like a relatively, shortish, I mean, depending on who your contractor is, but shortish amount of
Yeah.
time.
It's true.
Yeah, amazing. Well, that's
Yeah.
super fun. Okay, so where can our listeners find you, follow you? You have a podcast yourself, right?
Uh, my husband and my husband and I, and then our friend Stu, we have a we have a podcast called Gravel Kings.
Mhm.
It's very conversational and a lot of kind of Q&A for those who are looking to understand more of the sport of gravel cycling and also just a little bit of like commentary and news and stories of our adventures on that
Awesome.
podcast.
Yeah.
Um, Other than that, yeah, probably Instagram, which I'm Laura Cameron King on Instagram.
We will link that in the show notes for the listeners and the podcast. And then this has been so fun. Thank you so much for joining us. I know we had way more questions we wanted to talk to you about we didn't get to, but maybe we'll save those for another day. But this has been amazing, and we're excited to follow along for your 2025 racing year. So that sounds like a fun one.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm excited for 2025 and it was fun to chat with you. So thanks so much.